From Forbes breaking, merciless. Wesley Hunt drops the hammer on Democrats opposed to voter ID at Senate hearing. And then in the video there, they say Senate Judiciary Committee holds hearing on protecting voting rights in America.
Wesley Hunt. He serves as U.S. Representative for Texas 38th Congressional District. He was first elected in 2023 and serves on the House Judiciary Committee, as well as the House Subcommittee on the Constitution and Limited Government.
So he's fairly new in the grand scheme, which again kind of backs up the theory that the turns have tabled. The turns have...
Well. How the turntables...
You know.
He received his Bachelor of Science from the United States Military Academy at West Point. After serving 8 years in the United States Army, he attended Cornell University, where he obtained a Master's of Business Administration and Public Administration and Industrial Labor Relations. You're a busy guy. We're honored
All right. Thanks, Lindsay. We've got his entire background now. All right.
to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman Hunt, proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin and Ranking Member Graham, for having me here today to speak about voting rights in America, the country that I love dearly. More importantly, I'm here to talk about the left's soft bigotry of low expectations. Because it's the Democrat Party, not the Republican Party, that thinks so little of Black America as a people of color that they make the case that being Black in America means we can't obtain a government ID to vote.
And if you do get that ID to vote, then you must, at the federal level, vote for Bo Biden or, of course...
And that's not only a ridiculous assertion, it's demeaning and it's insulting. When it comes down to it, many of my colleagues on the left like to pretend that we're still living in the 1950s. Well, we're not. I've got some good news for you. It's 2024, and I know what year it is because I've been Black for just over 40 years. And I'm also the son of a retired lieutenant colonel who grew up in the segregated South. You see, my parents grew up.
So what are they going to do with this, right? I mean, the facade has it's over, right? I mean, public opinion, everything is basically done a complete 180, right? From assaults, from teenagers, young people assaulting art dealers. I'm speaking of one situation in particular in New York. I think it was 2019 when the guy had, they blacked his eye because he was wearing a MAGA hat. He was working at an art gallery in Lower Manhattan. But that's an extreme case. Obviously, UC Berkeley, all the protests, Antifa, we don't hear too much from them anymore, a little bit from BLM. But now it's basically completely opposite. And even the crazy lefties, of course, they don't like Bo Biden, but they can say it's because of Palestine, Israel, which is fine, but that's part of it. So the only people left is a handful of the mainstream media. And they know the truth, but they know what they get paid for.
In a Jim Crow South in the 50s and 60s in New Orleans, Louisiana. Their next generation, my parents had 3 kids. My sister, brother, and I all went to West Point, all 3 of us. We all served our country in combat. And I sit before you today as a sitting United...
This guy definitely has, the father figure dropping knowledge on the kids in a 90s hood movie kind of vibe.
United States congressman in a district in a suburb of Houston, Texas, that's a white majority district, that President Trump would have won by 25 points, and I won by almost 30 points. And that doesn't happen unless we've made some incredible progress in this great nation. Now, my colleagues on the left like to say that common sense voting laws, including requiring a government-issued ID, are racist, discriminatory, and burdensome. Do you know what?
And those are the same people who are going to try to convince you that a kid can magically change their gender and take hormones and get surgeries, but that very same kid wouldn't be able to get a tattoo or drink a beer or have a gun. I mean, it's so ridiculous, right? All of the hypocrisies are just a show of force.
What my father had?
And for the record, I think it's waning, right? They overplayed the hand.
Back in the 40s and 50s, before it was even cool, a government-issued ID. And continuing in his footsteps, I too have multiple government-issued IDs, and while that might be shocking to many people in this country, people may ask, how's that happen? It's very simple. It's personal responsibility for all Americans in this country, regardless of what you look like. Sitting with me today is my global entry card, my military ID card, my Texas driver's license, my Texas license to carry, because that's how we roll in Texas, my congressional card, and of course, the good old-fashioned American passport. What sorcery is this? What am I, the Black Houdini? How was I able to pull off the impossible and attain not one, not two, not three, but 6 government-issue IDs?
And that narrative, well, I think it is on the way out. You can watch hundreds of clips of college students in Berkeley or Columbia in Manhattan who genuinely buy that. Oh, they don't know how to get ID. Remember, there was memes years ago about, I forget the guy's name, but he was basically making fun of Bo Jiden, alluding to the idea that black people couldn't figure out how to work the internet, and then couldn't figure out how to get a ride. It was all ridiculous, and this was was this before or after the You Ain't Black thing? I don't know. But I'm also not sure how these people, well, of course, they ignore the hypocrisies because that's the point. What am I thinking?
Personal responsibility in this country. I fought for this country as an Apache helicopter pilot to protect free and fair elections, and having a government-issued ID isn't racist, it's American. You need to have an ID to drive a car, to check into the airport, open a bank account. You need an ID for basically everything to be a responsible adult in this country.
It's just so blatant, right? And that's the big ask. That's basically, a boy can be a girl. Like, that's the big ask. Yeah, you don't need ID. You can come from anywhere and decide how this, Commonwealth works. But of course, they're not going to get it. They are, however, pushing the window a little bit, right? Like Barbara Lee, who says, California should have, or I think she actually talked about a $50 national minimum wage. She knows that's not going to work, but it will move the needle. So, okay, we're not going to do 50, but how about 35? You know what I mean?
Except for voting, apparently, according to the left. Black America does not need well-meaning liberals putting their arms around us and telling us how we should go to the polls. In fact, if you look at recent headlines and polls, you will find that black men specifically in this country are more fired up than ever to participate in the next presidential election.
Yeah, because they took it too far. I always say it was worth the cost of entry to live in a big blue liberal city and have fun and enjoy the nightlife and walking around. I'm speaking of New York mostly, of course, right? When you were doing just a little bit of, insider trading and embezzling tax funds and kind of flying under the radar, maybe you would go out a night or two or sleep with your campaign manager's wife, whatever. But then you started destroying businesses and forcing pharmaceuticals and cutting the junk off kids. It just got completely off the plot. How did that happen? Who did it? Are we going to be conspiratorial about it? How did that happen? Where did that seed get planted?
And I think I know why.
And sorry. Also, I assume that same seed was planted by the person that also just magically made the left-wing party do a 180 on immigration, right? So in the same timeline, you were told, we went from build a new fence, border security, to no, that's all racist. Also, your little boy can, of course, become a girl. Also, you're afraid of, it's just never ending. But who is responsible for it? It's quite clearly not Bo Jiden.
And I'm really looking forward to these results. For the record, in the 2022 midterms in Georgia, it proved that election integrity and ballot accessibility can be achieved hand in hand. After the 2020 election, Georgia passed a voter election integrity law, and subsequently, the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against the state of Georgia alleging that the Georgia law is discriminatory and aims to restrict citizens from voting. President Biden even called this law, and I quote, Jim Crow 2.0. Really? In my humble opinion, referencing Jim Crow for common sense election integrity laws is offensive to those who actually experienced Jim Crow, like my parents and their parents before them. In fact, the law wasn't discriminatory at all, because in a 2020...
This makes sense, though. This is why they want to decriminalize drugs. Oh, yeah, just go do meth under the Bay Bridge and don't worry about what's going on there. Because you'd have to be stupid, just literally completely stupid, and which at that point you're probably not even voting, but stupid, strung out, or brainwashed, I guess, is the same thing as stupid, but nobody goes to bat for this. There is only blind allegiance and aggressive opposition. Nobody would, in their right mind, of course, and that's why they prey on low IQ, low information voters, shall we say, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. But I think it's happening. I think the tides are turning. Like I said, they went too far.
22 midterms, Georgia voters shattered voter turnout records across the state. And despite that record-breaking turnout in Georgia, the DOJ lawsuit is still pending. I suspect that it's because that record-breaking turnout resulted in a Republican governor being elected in Georgia, but I digress. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud, which I tend to do. I have a lot of respect for John Lewis, but the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is not about protecting voting rights. It's about solidifying Democrat power nationally. It's about federal control over state and local elections, which, by the way, is unconstitutional.
Everything they do is about coming up with a soft-sounding name so they can lace it with poison. Every single thing they do is about coming up with a name that they can repeat over and over again, while they know for a fact that very few people are going to actually read the bill.
It's about diminishing the security of our elections. And voter integrity laws aren't discriminatory. They are required.
Right? At this point, I'm obviously not reading bills. These things are crazy long. But anytime a Democrat suggests a bill, pushes a bill, Scott Wiener, for instance, you automatically just have to say no. Greaseball scumbag, bang your wife Gavin Newsom says, oh, vote yes on Prop 1. I'm like, no. But then I guess on the opposite side of that spectrum, there's somebody out there who's just going to vote with these Democratic policies because the name sounds good, right? So it is quite literally the equal and opposite. I would never, after you realize they're complete scumbags, you just can't, right? They could actually write the most level-headed bill on the planet, but I'd still have to say no because all of your credibility is lost. We cannot trust you.
For a functioning constitutional republic. I'm going to tell you today, I categorically reject the soft bigotry of low expectations. Black Americans and people of color are proud. We expect more of ourselves. That's what Black excellence really means to me. And above all else, we don't need a new solution to a problem that doesn't exist. Let me be clear. Making it to the polls to vote in person with an ID in this country today is a very low bar, extremely low bar. We can do it, white people can do it, Black people can do it, Americans can do it. And we should all want that for free and fair elections. If you want to be on the right side of history, you should reject the Democrats' Party's attempt to wind the clock back 70 years. Because I'm sitting right here in front of you, and I'm here to tell you we've come a long way. Let's continue this progress. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, sir, for having me.
Yeah, we've all said everything. Okay, any rational person would agree with what he's saying. And he did basically repeat I guess they're not my talking points, but it's it really doesn't take that much. That's why you don't have to be conservative. You only have to be common sense to realize that the Democrats are actually scamming everybody. And they know it. And they know that we know it. But they do it anyways, which is very sinister.